course, it was tweeted that that tree was going to fall over.
I knew it was going to happen. I mean, we said it was going to.
That one tree. Well, that exactly what it does.
All right, you all set? Cool. We go live. All right, thanks for coming out, everyone. I'll keep the introduction short. John Banghoff here today. Happy to have me. I think everyone knows who he is, so I'll let you introduce yourself if you want.
Cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Well, what's up, everybody? This is pretty good. 10:15 on the nose we started, so that's a win. Thanks for being here. As I said, this is probably the biggest turnout I've had for any of these Ken Reeves weather briefings over the past several years, so thanks all for coming out. I do apologize, as I said, I didn't make it out to the fun yesterday. Totally my error, but it's been fun getting to know you guys over the last several years. So figured I'd start today with a recap of an event about, a week and a half ago. Horrifying. I mean, probably like the most, worst case scenario it could have been. I have no idea how nobody got injured, how this didn't fall on people, and it's kind of awful to think about if that had happened. Tournament's probably canceled. But these types of freak events, it's amazing that they don't happen more often because all these people outside, and it rained a whole bunch, you get a little bit of wind. It wasn't even windy that much when these things fell over. But this is the type of thing that as meteorologists, we focus on quite a lot. So just wanted to start out with that. Fascinating, much better weather down in Hilton Head this past weekend, and fun to watch a 3-hole playoff yesterday if you're into golf.
By the way, they would not have canceled the event. They would have said that the victims would have wanted the event to go on.
I was thinking about that. I mean, you're probably right about it. Like, it's not.
I'm sorry.
Seriously, there's too much money to be made. Yeah. So as I do with these, I start out with this MODIS imagery. About a month ago, there was still quite a bit of snow on the ground. That went away pretty quickly by March 21st. And then green up is well underway across the southeast at this time. Do want to, well, that's not going to pause, but we'll just sort of keep going back. Interesting imagery. Yeah, you see a wildfire plumes, one in Allegheny National Forest. That is now, I believe, fully contained with the rain yesterday, but that burned for quite a few days. And then you can see the ones out farther east in eastern Pennsylvania, a couple of them, and then one in Jersey. There was some really incredible footage from a wildfire in New Jersey last week. And, hot, dry, windy, that will be what you get. So this is a plot of lots to look at here. Red's temperature, green's dew point, blue is relative humidity. And you can see from about April 7th all the way through April 15th, so a little over a week, we had quite low relative humidities and low dew points. And what's relevant for this, I wasn't totally familiar with fire weather, but red flag warning criteria when it's dangerous to burn is relative humidity is less than or equal to 30%. So you can see here, there were 8 days in a row locally and across central PA where we had relative humidities fall below 30%. When you add to that a relatively dry start to the year across much of the area and some gustiness with a variety of fronts moving through, combined with temperatures shooting up into the 70s and 80s, that's a recipe for some problems. And so this all culminated Wednesday, April 12th. We issued a red flag warning for the entire Commonwealth, very well collaborated and coordinated. And on the right-hand side, you see the fire danger there, which is, I'm not super familiar with the calculation of all of it, but a variety of variables go into that. And generally, when we get into the very high category, that's when we start having concerns. Extreme is not super common. But on this particular day, the winds were strong enough, the fuels were dry, and the relative humidities were low enough to justify. But on Wednesday the 12th, the winds got gusty, and in fact, we saw some wildfires. So bear with me here as we dive into the weeds a little bit. This has become sort of a phenomenon that's near and dear to my heart. We call these things dew point bombs, which is maybe at worst a hype term. But what I have here plotted is the national blended model, sort of our state-of-the-art blend that we use across the Weather Service. And the red line and the black line and the orange line are forecasts for temperature, dew point, and relative humidity. The dots are the observations. And so on these really sunny days, when you have deep mixing, what happens is the temperatures overperform, the dew points significantly underperform, and our relative humidity forecasts are honestly abysmal. I mean, so for example, this is, out to 7 or 10 days. So a 1, 2, 3-ish day forecast, the minimum relative humidity forecast was say 25 to 30%. The observed is more 10 to 15%. So you're talking about 40 to 60% error at times, and this gets worse as we go on. Add to that the fact that, again, the relative humidity criteria is 30%. If the MBM or a lot of the model guidance is forecasting a minimum relative humidity of, say, 35%, that might not be problematic. But if the observations drop to, say, 25 or 20 or 15%, suddenly go from, okay, we can burn today to, oh crap, we got things burning out of control. And so this is sort of a lot to look at. I don't know how intuitive this is, but as we push forward in time, these are subsequent forecasts for each day. And you can see that these forecasts don't get a whole heck of a lot better. You still have significant errors even in the 1 to 2 day time frame. The models just frankly suck at forecasting these events. And that is what we call a target of opportunity. So an opportunity for us to say, hey, we need to go lower on this. And our fire partners have certainly appreciated our efforts to do that. And even this was the last day of sort of the quote unquote dew point bombs. And you can see that there's errors here of, again, about 10% or so in the minimum relative humidity. And so this can cause quite a bit of problems. And again, we've gotten quite a bit better at that. The 10-day forecast versus even the 1-day forecast. And there's not a huge amount of change with these things. So won't dive into the weeds a whole lot more than that, but just wanted to make you aware that there are still these weather phenomena that the errors are pretty terrible. Now, let's go ahead and start talking about some climatological tidbits. Steve Seaman, the Penn State Meteorology Program, is a big fan of these. And so just pulled a couple tweets down. Brian Stormcell, alum here who puts out some great stuff. 4th 80-degree day in Bradford. In fact, I had the 5th yesterday. Most 80-degree days for the month of April when there were 4 consecutive 80-degree days. And then Steve, here locally, back-to-back highs of 86 degrees in State College, and daily records in both cases. Now, I think what's also notable, Bryant put together this amazing graph showing the first 60, 70, 80, and even 90-degree day. And you can see that most are earlier than average. And in fact, for Scranton and Williamsport, a freak 90-degree day occurrence just a few days ago. So no secret that it has been quite warm. I thought this was pretty compelling here. I don't know what that bullseye is down Cumberland, Adams County necessarily in the precipitation, but across the entire Commonwealth, well above normal temperatures so far this year. And looking at these Southeast regional climate perspectives, record-setting or record-challenging warmth across most of the area for the observed average mean temperature for the month to date, right? And so actually, the departure from wrong shown there is the year-to-date. So let's look at year-to-date now. Precipitation very below normal. The year-to-date is much more impressive. I don't know why that got messed up. That should be a month-to-date picture on the right there. My apologies for that. But record-setting warmth across most of the area. And in fact, I did a deep dive yesterday, and pretty much all the major climate stations in central Pennsylvania have had their warmest year-to-date on record. And so even though we only have Williamsport and Harrisburg as our long-term climate sites here locally, State College, Altoona, Bradford as well, all record warm year-to-date. That'll change, as we'll talk about, as things cool off a little bit. Also notably here, just in Southeast PA, top 5 driest year-to-date on record as well. So hot, dry, fire weather also sort of has enhanced the green-up. One other thing I came across, I had been thinking, man, it's been a really sunny April, so let's dive into this. And we can check out Darrell Hersman's plots from IEM. You can see April UNV, a remarkable amount of clear skies, or at least lack of low clouds. And just comparing to the last 3 Aprils, now the ASOS used to get turned off overnight, so that's why you have the splotchiness, but undoubtedly pretty notable how much sunnier it has been this April. Big fan of sunshine and warmth around here. Another plot here, the top plot shows the frequency of overcast skies. I just chose 2 p.m. Seem to be fairly representative. And you'll notice that April, at least at this point, 12% of days. I don't know if this is partly because we're only halfway through the month, or if that's a calculation month to date at this point. But regardless, it's been quite dry. And then as far as the frequency, quite a bit lower. Again, we'll see how this changes. It looks like it's going to be, quite a bit cloudier for the rest of the month, but at least thus far, quite a bit less cloudy. Same situation for Williamsport and for Harrisburg as well, and that sort of checks out based on just a quick look at the monthly sun amounts. I also noticed that February was quite a bit clearer, less overcast than it has been in the past. And looking at the monthly February frequency of overcast skies at 2 p.m. at State College, you can see 2023 was the lowest, perhaps back to the first year. And so I don't know, we could probably throw that out. But really the last 2 Februaries have been a notable lack of overcast skies, and just some interesting little bits of information. You can see February, again, not super sunny, but certainly more sun than what we've seen historically. From a growing standpoint, I'm a big fan of mowing grass, and so I like to look at these plots. This is a plot from the National Phenology Network. It looks at honeysuckles and lilacs, I believe, for their bloom. And at this point, spring bloom is ahead of schedule across the southeast. Technically hasn't made it here quite yet, but we'll wait on that. Leaf out has advanced all the way north of here up into New York. And you can see some of the darker greens down the lower Susquehanna Valley. It was the earliest spring on record. The record goes about 40 years back. And so quite a bit of early arrival of spring, no surprise. Warm, sunny, that's going to lend itself to some early growth. Let's get a little bit closer to home here. Go and play this through. If you were on Twitter or keeping an eye on anything, you likely saw this video and or heard about it. I was working, this would have been Saturday, Saturday would have been, yeah. And we're sitting there, we're watching some storms that are, firing up, upper low overhead, pop-up storms, no tornado risk according to SPC. We're not even really thinking much about the potential for tornadoes, and we take a call from familiar characters Mike Levine and JP Tracy, Penn State alums, who I believe were on their way to a wedding for some fellow Penn State media alums as well. And they said, hey, we have a report of a tornado. We're like, it doesn't look like it. There was some ground rotation on radar, but I'm not totally sure that that's legit. Then we see the video. It's like, oh, wow, that is quite an interesting video here. You can see the main funnel, and there's even some rotation and sort of a adjacent vortice, certainly low cloud heights, and unclear from that video if it actually touched down. Still no reports of damage at this point, but this video is pretty compelling too. You see the rope that extends potentially down to the surface, hard to say. And so we did a little bit more of a deeper dive to see kind of what we might be looking at. Now, I had never really seen this before, but the SPC on the mesoanalysis page has what we call the non-supercell tornado parameter. The definition there is spelled out on the top, but it's basically where you have steep low-level lapse rates, not a lot of convective inhibition, so you can get updrafts that go up. There's not a ton of deep layer vertical shear, so certainly no support for organized supercells or anything like that. But then you have large cyclonic surface vorticity, and that was certainly the case as we had the upper low moving overhead of us. And so basically the method here is, okay, when there's an upper low overhead, keep an eye on the non-supercell tornado parameter. Here's a depiction of radar. You can see reflectivity on the left, velocity on the right. The rotational velocity was about 17 knots. The guidance from Storm Prediction Center and others who have looked at this stuff would say that you don't really pull the trigger unless you have 25 knots or greater of rotational velocity. I don't think this is something that anybody would ever pull the trigger on, especially when the lowest elevation scan is 6,000 feet. And so this is probably one of those things where, okay, it's not going to cause a lot of damage. Maybe there's some localized, farm fields or things. Maybe a structure gets damaged to some extent, but very difficult to warn on, and was a bit of a surprise for us as we were in operations and seeing what happened with this. So again, just a really interesting case. Hadn't seen it before, and I really appreciate JP and Mike sending in the report to us on that particular day. And then we get to yesterday, quite foggy. If you were out and about yesterday morning, perhaps heading to your favorite joint downtown yesterday, you might have seen that it was a little bit foggy, right? So this was the Duncan webcam, 9:15 in the morning. This was the satellite loop here on the left-hand side. You can see a day break, plenty of valley fog. You get some moisture. Dew points are much higher than they've been in about a week. The result was a dense fog advisory across parts of southeast central Pennsylvania, and then along the Atlantic coast there, New Jersey, and New York, and parts of Connecticut as well. One thing I thought was interesting is a webcam overlooking the Susquehanna River, 9:15 a.m., about 1,000 feet off the ground. Not helpful whatsoever. An hour and a half later, beautiful day on Susquehanna as the clouds mixed out, and ended up being a pretty nice day before the cold front swept through, and we got quite a bit chillier as well. So a lot of background sort of looking back at what's going on. I thought about including some stuff last night. The velocity animation as the cold front slammed through is pretty interesting, as you saw winds move from sort of coming out of the southeast to coming due westerly. Didn't get a chance to incorporate those. But let's dive in. Looking at our current satellite map here across the region, these clouds are probably a little bit farther off to the east now, but we have overcast skies. You see this big occluded system with broad southwesterly flow aloft, and now the sort of westerly winds coming in as a low swirls overhead. Radar pretty much a clean sweep, a couple of light showers here across the northern tier. But not a whole heck of a lot to worry about from that standpoint. And what we're moving into is sort of just an unsettled pattern. You can see plenty of cloudy skies over Beaver Stadium. I'll just bang through several of these webcams. The Ohio State flag is beautifully on display here at the Penn State Golf Course. You can see, whoa, wait a second. You can see Warren County here, pretty overcast. Harrisburg looking pretty good right now between the high clouds off to the east and some of the lower clouds moving in from the north and west. Absolutely love that view. You can see plenty of sunshine in Harrisburg. Harrisburg Senators game. Well, I guess they're not playing quite yet, but a beautiful day there. And then up in Williamsport, you can see a little more cloud cover. Lewistown, nice view of downtown. Charterton, pretty nice spot. I just like bouncing through. And then up in Tioga County up north, has some really nice views of a little more cloud cover. Kind of interesting spot looking over Morris. Gettysburg, a beautiful day in the southeast. It's quite a spot. York looking good as well. And then Flight 93 shows, Laurel Highlands tend to be a little cloudier in these westerly wind patterns, and that's certainly the case today. So as far as what we're looking at this point, I think the big story is a big change of air mass, right? A couple of days ago, we had widespread 80-degree temperatures, and now we're hanging out in the 40s to 50s. Quite a bit of cold air up here to the north and west. Did not get a chance to put in any reports from Wisconsin, but one of my buddies who I used to work with got 15.7 inches of snowfall between yesterday afternoon and today. They were near 90 just a couple of days ago. So quite a baroclinic system and big temperature gradient happening. And we'll see a rebound here moving forward. Big picture-wise, this is weather.gov/forecast points. I think maybe the best depiction of a weather service forecast that we have at our disposal. Grabbed this yesterday, but you can see cooling off here as we get into Tuesday. Going to be quite a chilly day tomorrow. 850 temps dropping below zero. Gusty westerly wind is going to make temperatures feel likely in the upper 30s or upper 20s tomorrow morning, and then by Wednesday morning we'll drop into maybe the mid 20s around here. Not a great setup. Then we'll have high pressure moving overhead. Quite a bit milder. It's pretty remarkable that by Wednesday morning we're wind chill of around 25, and then by Friday afternoon we're pushing 80 again. So pretty again, a lot of temperature gradients, fairly strong systems. Plenty of sunshine for the middle of the week. Could see some fire weather concerns ramp up again depending on how much moisture we are able to get in the soils. And then looks like next weekend there'll be another system moving through. So let's dive in and sort of see what WPC surface maps look like. So here's the system, big low, that's very occluded. You can see the occluded front on the north side of the system, upper low swirling overhead and much colder air moving its way in. By this afternoon, we'd expect some sort of whack-a-mole scattered showers and perhaps a stray thunderstorm across the Northwest Mountains in particular. Going to just kind of be a blustery late winter, early spring-like day. Temperature profiles are going to be cold enough that we'll see a changeover to snow overnight tonight, especially in the Laurels. I would not be surprised if we see some graupel or perhaps some snowflakes here as we get into the overnight hours. I don't really expect accumulation because of how warm the surfaces are. Maybe grassy surfaces will get something, but roads should be just fine. And then even by tomorrow morning, still could have some snow ongoing. Here's a current forecast across the Commonwealth. You can see Cleveland going a little more exciting, just sort of coming off the lake with that fat split. Generally speaking, less than an inch. Don't expect accumulation here locally. Lower Highlands, you can see it coating to maybe an inch at some of the higher elevations on that front. I say let's get rid of the snow. I will say that just a little sneak preview. We did a snowfall forecast challenge for the Central Pennsylvania local chapter, and without giving away the winner, as long as we don't get any more big snowstorms, a relatively recent addition to the Central Pennsylvania weather community, somebody who has joined us within the last year or so. So I'll just dangle that there for you. By the time we get into Wednesday night, high pressure building in, we'll start to see still chilly by the time we get into Wednesday afternoon, but as high pressure moves off to our south and east, we'll have better flow pattern, southwest winds, warm front moving through, and again, by the end of the week, looks pretty incredible. My wife and I and our daughter are actually heading down to Florida, so liking the looks of the forecast at least to the end of the week, and then we'll see things get a little more interesting moving forward. Thursday into Friday looks like the warmest days before then a cold front slams through. Another pretty deep system tracking across the Great Lakes, and so it anticipates some gusty winds behind it, sort of sagging off to the south. Just kind of a mess. Not a great pattern for severe weather here locally, because when the low is that close and it's all wrapped up and included, you just don't have great forcing mechanism to cause much severe weather. That's not atypical. Usually May timeframes when we really start ramping up, but it's not uncommon that we could have a stray severe weather day with a strong cold front moving through. No real worries for that at this point. And then as we get into the second half of the weekend, as is relatively typical, the first half of the weekend's kind of black. Not great, and then by Sunday things start improving. In the early part of the week looks like it should be a pretty good deep high pressure coming in. The problem is, if you note these sort of pressure contours, the source region here is up in Canada, so quite a bit of colder air coming in, and we'll look at that here in just a second. Map from WPC, the text on the right-hand side got a little distorted in the transfer process, but this is from the Weather Prediction Center, and I really like it because it shows you not only the temperatures, but also the temperature departures. And so you can see where it's warm and where it's cold. Today, you can very clearly interpolate where the upper level low is going to be in place with strong northwesterly winds and cool temps aloft. That still sort of has a grip on us by the time we get into the day tomorrow. But look at the warmth across the central United States. It's going to be able to build its way in as the winds turn out more the south or southwest during the day on Wednesday. We're in the 60s. By Thursday, we're back pushing 80 degrees. And then on Friday, ahead of that cold front slamming through, another really, really nice day. And again, you've got a 40-degree temperature gradient from North Dakota to the middle Atlantic. So just sort of bouncing around. And then by Saturday, we finally start to get a little cooler. And looks like the cool may be here to stay. As far as the GEFS is concerned, ensemble look is always very helpful with this sort of a situation. You can see yesterday was the warm day, much colder today and tomorrow. By the time we get into Wednesday, we'll start ramping up. There's still some uncertainty as far as sort of Wednesday and Thursday, how cold it's going to be, and based on sort of cloud cover and winds. If the winds go calm, because the temperatures drop quite a bit on the lower end of the spectrum. But then we warm up sort of Friday. Into the weekend, though, you definitely see this trend downward. Quite a bit of uncertainty now between the guidance as far as the timing of the cold front and the included front and how all those features are going to play out. But bottom line, it's going to rain at some point in the Friday to Saturday, or potentially the Sunday time frame, and then things get a little bit messier down the pike. Just as a sort of a sneak preview for you guys, so heading into next week, this is the European Ensemble temperatures for State College here locally. And you can see that even the mean is near just above freezing into next week. And so if you're a planting type, I assume college students don't have a ton of interest in that. Just a reminder, and we'll be communicating this with people at the Weather Service office from our social media accounts. The last spring freeze is usually May 1st to 15th around here, if not perhaps late April, so not time to plant anything yet. Would not be surprised to see some frost or freeze products issued next week for a good chunk of central Pennsylvania, with the cold kind of hanging on until the end of the month. Some good news from a rainfall standpoint and a drought standpoint. We are expecting, half to an inch of rain across much of the area, although here locally maybe quarter to half an inch. It would be nice to have a more regular batch of precipitation. I know Ben Redford just planted some sweet corn, so all the farmer types definitely interested in some precipitation. Based on that prolonged stretch of very dry and sunny weather, that comes at a cost. So abnormally dry area added across the southeast at this point. No secret that it's been quite a bit dry down there. So I would not anticipate a big dent in this with any of these systems on about a whole heck of a lot of moisture. And again, this map shows that it's going to be maybe feast for those that don't need it and famine for those that do. We'll just kind of keep an eye on that, see what happens. Looking off into the future, pretty strong signal here, as I said, a deep trough across much of the region with cold air infiltrating quite a bit. You can see below normal temperatures favored in early next week, which is reflected by the European ensemble data. Perhaps above normal precipitation, but not a super strong signal. And I don't know why that is broken, but 8 to 14 days looks fairly similar to this, if not even a little bit stronger in terms of the temperature outlook. So as I wrap up here, I want to just shout out a couple AMS NWA events. Rob Leidick has coordinated a happy hour at Anti-Fragile Brewing Co. May 4th. So if you seniors in particular are still around and want to make up for my lack of attendance yesterday, we'd be happy to do some cheers with you there. And then we're also working on a tour of Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency down in Harrisburg with the Harrisburg Senators game. And so there's a QR code there. It's also on social media. We'll love your input if you guys are either staying around here in State College or going to be within driving distance of Harrisburg. Definitely encourage you to check that out. For those that are undergrads, or I should say underclassmen, a couple save the dates to mention. Scholarships are open for the National Weather Association. A few scholarships for anywhere between $1,000 and $3,000, I believe. The deadline's a little over a month away, so check that out. And then I'm pretty involved with planning the student conference as well out in Kansas City. So definitely encourage you to make plans on September 9th to come out. Had an NWA recruitment event for SUGAMs a couple weeks ago, and it went pretty well. So just wanted to shout those things out. And then I'll close with some tour to offices photos from over the last month or so, or I should say a few months. Had a whole heck of a lot of fun. And with that, I'd be happy to sort of chat if anybody has any questions about weather stuff, things we didn't talk about. But thank you all so much for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Why did you have to rub it in by saying you're going to Florida?
Look, we had beautiful weather last week. It's not like it's it's been miserable here and I'm escaping.
Answer my question.
Well, I'm gonna be enjoying some sun and some pool and some ocean. We're taking my 7-month-old flying for the first time, so it might not all be sunshine and rainbows. We'll see. It'll be an interesting endeavor flying out of Pittsburgh on Wednesday.
It's probably gonna be lit.
You think so?
The models forecasting a lot of it.
Was that Abbott?
I was literally just going to say, hey, can you help me out here with this thing? I think we're flying out like 9 a.m. So maybe it's a direct flight, Pittsburgh to Orlando. So hopefully that'll be a little more immune to anything like that. While we're at it, I do want to go look at, let's see. Curious to see what the snowfall reports were up in Wisconsin. When did you go there? That's brutal.
Yeah, that is.
I'm not interested in that whatsoever.
Not a fan.
Oh.
How much?
They can have it.
80s there. I feel like there had been like on top of that felt a lot of off. It must have got a lot of like
Yeah. No, it's heavy and it's windy too. My buddy was saying that power outages are a huge concern. Yeah. I think it got close to 90 a couple days ago actually. I guess it's too late now because it's already fallen. But yeah, big time issues out there with all the snow, and I think it's gonna sort of rebound here, for them as well.
That's gonna be a neat visible satellite
Heck yeah,
animation.
totally.
Watching it melt.
To see, yeah, it'll probably go on relatively quickly, I would imagine.
And that's a short amount of time, you think, flooding in the streams and little areas.
Yeah. No doubt. Yeah, the amount of QPF that they got, I think, is probably fairly significant. And let's look at the see if.
It'll also be neat to watch how that inhibits the warm up during the day.
Totally right. Yeah. What?
The border, there'll be
Yeah.
a huge temperature gradient.
Actually, I saw that last week
Yeah.
where there was still some snow up there, and there was like a 40-degree temperature gradient between snow cover and not. And this is not helpful. Slow internet. River observations, river forecasts. Let's see. Yeah. Yeah.
Is that major flooding?
Is that right or?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Oh, that is.
Yeah. So that's a problem for sure. I don't know what I've also been really thankful to not, be a West Coast meteorologist, because they've just been getting absolutely obliterated too with all the atmospheric rivers and things. I think things have sort of calmed down at the moment. Beautiful spring bloom out there though. Lots of flowers, and just hoping now that it doesn't turn very dry and create enhanced fuels for burning. But we'll see what happens. Yeah.
Thinking about the communication side with the automated tweets now, how are you guys in operations?
Yep.
dealing with that?
Yeah, so if you're not familiar with it, basically with the new Twitter API restrictions, there's, I think, a limit of like 100 automated tweets per day and like 1,500 a month or something like that. Locally, kind of just like sitting back and seeing what happens with it, because there's been some rumors from questionable accounts that are saying the Weather Service the limits have been lifted. Nobody can necessarily confirm that yet. But I think for state colleges accounts, we don't have big enough events where we're going to be tweeting out that many on a given day. So I'm hopeful that we'll fly under the radar. But for offices that have more significant severe weather, or for the national level, like severe thunderstorm account that tweets all of them out, that's going to be a little bit problematic. I've also seen some conversation, even with folks here locally, on Twitter about people using social media as their primary means of receiving warning information. Odds are, if you're looking on social media, you're probably not, in the spot. But I did see someone make a good point that social media can be a really good way to sort of validate, is this something I need to be concerned about? And so it'll be interesting to kind of let it ride. As the government, we have to be where the people are, right? And so social media is a way to do that, and it is an effective means for us to get out information. I would imagine that it's going to get worked out, but at this point, it's just sort of see what happens. We've opted not to post the whole canned thing because, again, I don't know if it's going to affect us, and I know that the comments of that are just going to be a bunch of political mumbo jumbo that is unhelpful. But we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But interesting climate right now from a social media standpoint, because it is one of the ways you reach a specific demographic of people, right? The Facebook and Instagram and Twitter demographics are not the same. And on Twitter in particular, that's our primary way of reaching younger people. We won't ever be on TikTok, I imagine, so we're never going to reach the youngest group of folks. But yeah, good question there.
Are you sure you don't want to go on TikTok?
I think Be Real would be a good thing for the Weather Service. I really think that would be awesome. Honestly, Be Real is kind of like wireless emergency alerts. Like, I think we need to create a Weather Service version of Be Real. This is unofficial, by the way, for those. Weather Service version of Be Real, where like it goes off and everybody has to take a picture of what's happening with the weather, right? Like, and we can target areas that are in a warning. Like, take the picture, show us what hail you have, how much snow, that kind of stuff. I think there's a really good way to thread that. Maybe I'll have to put that into the suggestion box for a new director to see if he can get on that.
Well, you can just add take a picture for anything.
Yeah, same type thing. Like, just something where we encourage more people to report what's happening. like that tornado or funnel cloud the other day. Like, let's get everybody around that area to send a picture so we can figure out if it touched down. What happened with that? Yeah, maybe that's not helpful either. Yeah.
Thank you, John. That was wonderful.
Yeah, thanks for having me, everybody. Seniors, if I don't see you, best wishes with everything. Be in touch, and hopefully we can share a beverage at some point in the next